Welcome to the best bets show of the Pump Fake. Going into Week 8 NFL Sunday, Jarrett Bailey with you as always, joined by my friend Ben Heisler. It's good to see you, my friend. How are you?
What's up, Jarrett? I feel like at some point I'm gonna be, really reaching for the moon on this show in these different appearances. If I can find a way to get myself, whether it's some reaction or some crazy betting take that gets me into the introduction of that show, then I'll know that I've made it. Like that'll be that moment in my life where I can be like, you know what? It's all that work, all that time. You got it.
The somewhat paying attention in my video production class in college actually paid off for one thing, and it was making
Great
that
intro.
So I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, some nice names on there. My buddy Eric Edholm, Michael Jr. At least those are the two that I kind of remember in the early part. Mike over at Football Outsiders. There's some nice names on that list.
Matt Verderam, one of my mentors in this business.
Yeah, my former coworker over at Fansided and Betsided. Yeah.
No, Tanier and Verderam, my two biggest mentors in this business. I love those men to death. So yeah, a lot of good names in the annals of Pump Fake history. and you as big as any of them. Let's talk bets, because there's a few props that I saw coming into this week, and I immediately thought, okay, if Ben Heisler likes them, then I feel good about betting them. And the one that I do want to start off with, I want to start off with Tank Dell's receiving numbers, because I'm big on Houston against Carolina in terms of what Tank Dell's going to do. He's coming off of an injury. He didn't play against New Orleans, but his receiving yards, it varies on what site you use. I think BetMGM has 46 and a half yards. I think DraftKings and FanDuel both have 47 and a half, but anywhere in that neighborhood, I think that he can hit that against a Carolina defense that will have their hands full with Nico Collins, who's having a breakout year. And I think when you got JC Horn is probably going to be focused on him. If JC Horn's playing, honestly, I don't even know if JC Horn's going to be in the lineup. But regardless, I like Tank Dell this week. What say you?
So it's interesting because from a betting perspective, I think this is actually a fairly reasonable line to back Carolina at plus 3.5.
Yeah.
Just because for as many concerns as they have in their secondary, and Tank Dell is a really interesting play. And I'm going to shout out my buddy Derek Brown in just a second, because I saw a great stat regarding Tank this week. But they can still apply some pressure. And that's actually been an area where Stroud has had some concerns this year. So as far as Tank is concerned, I'm going to pull up this note from my guy, Derek Brown. So in weeks 2 through 4, when he was, full-time playing at that level, led Houston in deep targets, finished with at least 72 receiving yards in 2 of those 3 games. And they play a ton of zone coverage. And this is somebody that during those 3 weeks, he led the team with over 22% target share. His air yard share was in the 30% range. And he's going up likely against Dante Jackson, who has just been abysmal. So I'm with you on those Tank Dell numbers. And I think right now, if you can find that type of value in that low 40s area, wouldn't check in on the weather, because there's some weird weather all over the country this week. Maybe not so much in sort of like the southeastern Carolina type area, but I mean, it's hard to imagine a scenario in which Tank Dell just doesn't go ham this week against that type of matchup, against that type of defense. But I do expect Carolina to make some adjustments, and that's actually been historic to Frank Reich over the last several years. Weeks 1 through 6, he's one of the worst coaches in the NFL.
Yeah.
And then from week 6 on, once the quarterback, he has a new quarterback every year that figures out the offense, they play significantly better. So we've already started to see that progression from Bryce a little bit the last few weeks. I think they're going to play well against Houston this week. Maybe we'll see a little bit more offense than anticipated as well. But I do like the Tank Dell call quite a bit.
And I did just look. Xavier Woods and JC Horn are ahead of schedule, but it doesn't look like they will be suiting up tomorrow. So hamstring still holding back JC Horn.
Yes.
And Tank Dell was one of my favorite players coming into the draft, and I think that he landed in a perfect spot, being the number 2 behind Nico Collins with CJ Stroud. And Bobby Slowick and everybody there has done a really good job. I had Aaron Schatz on last week. We were talking about the first 5 games that CJ Stroud has had as like the best for a quarterback in history. Like, just if you look at like advanced stats and everything, he's just been fantastic. But the Panthers aren't going to lose every game. And going up against another rookie quarterback and another brand new staff and whatnot, this does feel, I mean, you touched on it. This could feel like, the spot where if they're going to get their first win, maybe this is it, where the gears start churning for Bryce Young on the offense. And they start, maybe, I don't think they're going to go on a roll or anything, but eventually, if they do get their first win, I think that this would be a good spot to do it.
Yeah. And like, if you look kind of collectively at Houston, right? Like there's obviously a lot to feel really impressed about, but they're not a great team. I think you can almost make the argument that with the way that D'Amico Ryans has them playing, like he has them coached up, but Houston is, we talk about their defense really being significantly better. They're still bottom 8 in the league in opponent yards per game. They're still bottom 12 in opponent yards per play. They are the 5th worst team in the NFL in opposing third down conversion percentage. And that's actually been an area for Carolina that's, they're starting to make a little bit more improvement on, especially by utilizing Adam Thielen. So I tend to look at this matchup and say to myself, like, Houston can still move the ball, and Tank Dell's going to be a major part of that. But Stroud needs to make sure he has time to throw. And if so, then they'll be fine. But I think we need to just pay a little bit more attention to Carolina here, especially with that hook at home. Feels like it's a good spot, especially coming off the bye, to back them this week.
One of my favorite plays this week is taking the under on the Titans total points. I found it at 17.5 at BetMGM. That feels like as close to a lock as anything this week. They're going up against a Falcons defense that's 10th in the league in EPA per play, 5th in success rate, starting Will Levis, who has the awareness of like a guy at a bar who's like talking to a girl. She's very clearly not interested, but then he walks back to his bros. He's like, dude, she so digs me. That's Will Levis in the pocket. He has no idea what's going on. Will Levis,
the meme of the guy with the sunglasses talking to the blonde girl at the Astros game. Is that where things are now?
Yes. The guy is Will Levis, and the girl is the pocket collapsing around him, and him just totally oblivious to everything. I think now they do have the benefit of the game being at home, but I don't think that's going to make much of a difference. I think Atlanta, the defense is going to do enough to hold them up to under 17 points. And I would take the under overall on this game too. It's 35.5 on FanDuel. I don't know what it is in other markets, but I could see this being like a 13-10, 16-13 type game.
Yeah. What's so fascinating about these games too is that a lot of the trends actually over the course of this year have indicated that these low total games really benefit the underdog when it comes to against the spread bets.
Yes.
Like heavily, like we're talking probably like a 70-75% clip for the dogs here. And I think the question that we have to ask ourselves is, if Levis plays, is it really going to be, first of all, it's sort of two-part. Like I'm thinking about it from like a Tyson Bagent perspective, just using the Chicago Bears as an example. So at home against the Raiders, I think most of us know that the Raiders aren't a particularly good football team. It's slightly different for Atlanta, but Atlanta certainly has their flaws.
Yeah.
There's no real tape from an NFL level on Levis besides the preseason at this point. Titans are already a very much run-heavy team anyway. And if they're able to slow down the Falcons run game, like they're going to be in it. And Mike Vrabel historically has been one of the better covering coaches in NFL history as a dog. So there's a lot of factors at play. And I've also noticed over the course of this week that the line has moved towards Tennessee as well. But your point about their team total for the under makes plenty of sense. Like, would anybody be surprised if this game ends up being 13-10 Falcons by the time this is done and they barely cover? or, somewhere along the lines, like 14-12. They move the ball, but then Levis has some issues on fourth down. They just kick a bunch of field goals.
I was going to say that this feels like if there's a game that's going to have scoregami this week, it will be this one, where it's just the stupidest football we've ever seen. And so it's going to be like
Tennessee upsets Atlanta 15-11.
Yeah.
You know what? That should be a bet somewhere. If we can get the odds makers to be like, will this game have scoregami? Yes or no?
Dude, that's fantastic.
I'm going to request it. I'll send something out over to like maybe DraftKings and FanDuel and be like, hey, is this an option? I think they've had it for Super Bowl prop bets before. I don't know about a regular season game, but
I'm gonna see what the odds would be to bet the game to end 15-11, because you can do like correct score and whatnot. Let me see. Okay. Let me drop this down. There are so many scores. So it's hard to even find 11 in here. I don't even know if it's even an option. It goes 10, 12, or like 10, 13. If I find it, I'll tweet it out later, because I'm truly fascinated on what that would be for the odds of that.
There's a lot to consider here.
Yes.
For this.
From that we go to I had it pulled up and then it went away. Where did it go? Let's go to Dallas and the Rams, because that is one that I'm intrigued in. Dallas is 6.5 point favorites at home against the Rams, who they've been very up and down. Like last week, Stafford went 14-29. Puka Nacua had a big day. Cooper Kupp only had 2 catches. I'm looking at Cooper Kupp's receiving props. I went alt receptions and took him 7+ receptions, and I went alt yards and took him 80+ yards. I feel like a big bounce back day for Cooper Kupp. We know that they're going to throw the ball heavily. It's just a matter of, okay, what's this target share going to look like with Nacua and Kupp? But I mean, those are really the 2 guys that he's going to. Now, Tutu Atwell's got his as well, but we know that the predominant 2 are Nacua and Kupp, and I think that Cooper Kupp will have a nice bounce back day against Dallas.
It's pretty remarkable that, a team with Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp and this, amazing story of Puka Nacua is drastically different offensively without Kyren Williams available, right? Like that's been a very under-discussed aspect of what has allowed this Rams team to kind of flounder around. Because when we talked about their defense heading into the start of the year, we're like, this Rams defense could be, other than Donald, like
we didn't know who any of these dudes were. They're starting guys like Russ Yeast and Christian Roseboom, and like, who the hell are
which
these?
Both of those names absolutely sound like, made up players.
When you're in like your 9th year of a Madden
franchise mode. But like he was balling out, and it was opening up play action even more for Nacua downfield. And then once Kupp came back, you saw the emergence, and like they both will kind of play my turn, your turn, but you can absolutely trust both of them downfield. And to Dallas, like the only reason that I feel like the matchup sets up well for them, it's probably not going to be a spot that I bet, just because I just don't trust Dallas to cover. And we've seen this line move off of 7 to 6.5. Like where the Cowboys have some issues is stopping in the run game. And that right now, that's just not a strength of the Rams right now. Yeah. But in the past game, when they're locked in, when they have a lead, like they're going to take the ball away. They're going to pressure the quarterback. Stafford still has a tendency to make some poor passes and try to play a little bit of hero ball. And it just doesn't feel like this is a line where I just have a whole lot of confidence in either side, despite Dallas probably having the main statistical edge in the matchup.
Yeah, I'm leaning. If I was to bet the spread in this, I think I would still go Rams to cover, just because I don't know what to make of the Cowboys. I feel like that's every year. Like at this point, we're asking ourselves, what are the Cowboys? How good are they really? And with an offense like the Rams, with McVay, with Stafford, with Kupp, with Nacua now, it always feels like they'll at least hang around. And we've seen that for the most part this year. And
yeah, and by the way, I should mention too that as we're on the show right now, there is still one book that is offering Dallas at -6.5 Everybody else has actually moved to 7. So
Oh, wow.
I would, if you are considering the Dallas side and you're watching this with us, go ahead and do some line shopping around. I don't know if you're sponsored or have any sponsored with any sports books here, Jarrett.
I
So
do
I don't know
not.
if I can give out the name of it.
No worries. You can give out whatever name you'd like.
Okay. It rhymes with Panpool. Panpool Sportsbook still has the Cowboys at -6.5. Should you be interested.
What do you make of Jaguars Steelers? Like, I'm the resident Steelers fan here, and I have zero confidence that the Steelers are going to win this game, but they're only 2-point dogs. And now Jacksonville's offense has had a little bit of trouble scoring, with the exception of the Colts game. But their defense has played really well, and that doesn't serve well for a Steelers offense. I mean, we were talking in the lobby about how bad Matt Canada's offense is. That doesn't bode well for the Steelers. I would sprint. Now, if you want to do like a teaser and play with the over-under here and tease it to under 46.5, or that would be a lovely play and a teaser. That would probably be the only thing I played here is the over-under, because I don't think that this is going to be a high-scoring game. No Steelers game tends to be, unless they're getting blown out by either San Francisco or Houston.
Is this the part of the show where I feel obligated to give out Mike Tomlin's statistics over the course of his career as a home dog, or is that already well established within the course of your audience? Are they already fully aware of what those numbers look like?
You might as well, because a refresher is never a bad thing.
Okay, so for those of you who might be new here, let me tell you about Mike Tomlin as a home dog over his career. It's actually, the numbers are pretty insane. And yes, you're supposed to take every year from a year-by-year level, but I mean, with Tomlin, it's kind of hard not to. So 18-5-3 against the spread as a home dog in both the regular season and the playoffs, via Evan Abrams of Action Network, who's so good at finding all these different numbers and putting them out in his weekly column every week. I always love being able to dive through that and find some just really good nuggets each week. So that's more than 78% of the time Tomlin is going to cover as a home dog. He's also 16-10 straight up over the course of his career as a home underdog. Jacksonville is interesting, right? Because they have the ability, really, like I think their defense is kind of being overlooked a little bit. And
I do too.
They could very easily get off to a big lead if Pickett has some issues. But man, like for as many issues as they have right now, like watching Pickens go downfield could be a major issue. And I also think, like, if Warren gets involved, as well he should in this game, like Pittsburgh's not going away. And so now you have home field. Now you have a Jacksonville team that's had some issues, by the way, in second halves of games. The numbers say to take Pittsburgh here. But I kind of feel like Pittsburgh got one that they shouldn't have won last week. Yeah. And I'm wondering if, like, all right, now with all this positive momentum back on Pittsburgh, if this is one of those spots where maybe they let it slip away in Jacksonville, who continues to improve, especially under Doug Peterson, the later into the season. I think the line is fair on the Jacksonville side. I'm probably more likely to lean into them. If it were 3 or more, I'd be backing Pittsburgh. Because it's 2, I think it's a reasonable line to take Jacksonville as a short road favorite here.
And the Steelers also, this is the first game of a 3-game homestand for the Steelers. They got Jacksonville, Tennessee on Thursday night after this, and then Green Bay. I don't see a world where the Steelers are somehow 7-2, despite this god-awful offense that trots out there every week.
Let me ask you that too. Like, let's say they take 2 of 3 at home against,
and they're 6-3.
Yeah, and that's Titans and Green Bay are more than reasonable possibilities for wins. Clearly, the odds makers believe it could be, all 3 of them. They're 7-2. Like, I took Tomlin preseason for Coach of the Year at 25-1. Same with D'Amico Ryans over in Houston, and then Steichen at 22-1. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like there's 2 of those 3 names I feel pretty good about the Coach of the Year race heading into this point, even with all the issues that both these 2 teams have.
That's the thing too. Like, it would be different. Like, let's say that they do, are sitting at 6-3 and whatnot. It would be so different if they were winning these games with an offense that looked like an NFL offense, and it wasn't just a bunch of like weird fluky plays that just happen to go their way every week, and they pull them out of their butts and escape with wins constantly. Like, just not sustainable ways of winning. And I think that's the difference. When you look at what D'Amico's doing in Houston, where Houston, Stroud is having a great year. The offense looks really good. Defensively, they're solid. There's still some things that they need to work out, as we already pointed out, but they're well ahead of what we expected them to be. Same thing with the Colts. Even without Anthony Richardson, they just put up 38 against the best defense in football with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Like,
right.
The last time the Steelers put up 38 points, I don't know. Couldn't tell you. So that's all wins aren't created equal, I guess, is how I would point that out.
Yes,
when it comes to
that's perfectly that's perfectly fair. But I mean, if in this division, and like I think the expectations of the AFC North were drastically different than what they might look like now. But Baltimore's more than viable. Although we can talk about that game in a little bit too. I have a few concerns that they're going to find themselves sleepwalking through that game a little bit.
I already bet Arizona plus 9.5. I sprinted to that.
I think that's the right play, and I also think that could be Baltimore with a like a 10-point halftime lead and let it get away. Yep. They've always been a very good first half team under Harbaugh, and Arizona, to their credit, has fought with very little talent on that roster. So I'm glad you and I are thinking on the same line there, because Arizona, I wouldn't necessarily call them a live dog, but they're very much live to cover this week.
They're scrappy. They're like, how do I best describe the Cardinals?
They're like the Lions from a couple years ago when Dan Campbell first took over. When that team, I think, won, what was it, 3-14?
Yeah, they didn't win a lot of games.
And they were like 11-5, 11-6 against the spread. The Lions were a great team that year to bet on, because nobody had any faith they were going to win the game, but they always covered. They kept playing in close games. And then they started off with that terrible start last year, and then won all those games in a row towards the end and covered again. Like, I think in the Dan Campbell era, like, they have the best cover percentage over the last 2.5 years of any team in the NFL.
That's remarkable. The Cardinals, the Cardinals to me are like, for any wrestling fans, who Spike Dudley is, who was part of Team 3D with Bubba Ray Dudley and Devon Dudley, but he was the third Dudley who weighed like $190. Not even, he played probably like $140. Would just get the shit kicked out of him and thrown around all the time. But that was just kind of his role. But you always expected him to lose, but you knew you'd be entertained, and that's what the Cardinals are right now. They're gonna fight. They're gonna lose, but they'll hang in there. That's kind of what they are right now. But I do agree.
You're right, and they've been consistent with that too all year.
Yeah, but I do agree. Plus 9.5 for the Cardinals is one of my favorite bets of the week.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I haven't bet it yet, and the only reason is because I think I'll be able to get a better line live over 10, just because of how Baltimore has been as a first half team. So we're definitely in lockstep agreement. I just haven't made the bet yet.
I'm debating on who to bet anytime touchdown for Dolphins Patriots. Like, Mostert seems like a lock. Jalen Waddle, like Hill, Mostert, and Waddle. It's always like, okay, which one? Sometimes all three of them hit. Sometimes two of them hit. It's just like this weird casserole of guys who are always going to score. I don't know. If you had to pick one of two, would you pick Mostert or Waddle?
I feel like I should pull up the odds and like that's going to be the reason for it. Like, who do I believe is more likely to hit? Mostert for sure.
Yeah,
Mostert for sure. Just because they trust him so often in the red zone. But like, what's going to be the better value on the board? Like, Raheem Mostert right now is, best I'm seeing for him is minus 140 to score an anytime touchdown.
FanDuel has him at minus 145.
Yeah. So if we're looking at it from that perspective, and me personally, this is just like my own rule. I can't stand. Let's like McCaffrey. And it's got to be like the right scenario. I have a very difficult time betting an anytime touchdown for anybody at non-plus odds, at minus odds. Waddle, on the other hand, you can get for plus 150. And he's a guy that I feel like you take the ladder on this week for receiving yards, receptions, anytime touchdown. I might take him for 2 touchdowns this week. Which I'm loading up the odds right now. You can get it at FanDuel right now for 2+ touchdowns at 11-1. That's a fairly reasonable line to me because he's going to see a ton of targets because what New England does. Like they make it very aware that they try to take away your number one option. And while you can't necessarily take away Tyreek Hill, and the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel are going to be really smart with how they deploy him, it's going to leave Waddle for plenty of opportunities in the middle of the field. And honestly, I could see Waddle having like a 9-catch, 78-yard day where they're like, all right, you want to dink and dunk to Waddle all day? Fine. But that could also very much lead into a couple, red zone scores as well. Because he's a very talented receiver.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not Tyreek Hill. And that's not a slight to him. So I do look at Waddle this week as probably one of the guys that I'm probably going to be targeting. Like if I was making a DFS lineup, I think that's a really good play. Like maybe like a one-off play through this game.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that already in their matchup early on in the year. Like Hill had a touchdown. I think he only had 5 catches. Like it's not like he went off.
Right.
So we know what you already pointed out. We know how Belichick's going to play. He's going to try to take away the thing that you do best. But Miami does a lot of things really good and has a lot of players that do them really well. So
absolutely.
8.5 is the line for that in favor of the Dolphins. Are you leaning toward them covering that? I feel like a big letdown week for the Patriots after a game that they shouldn't have won is in the makings here, where they just collapse.
That's fair. It's that narrative sets up very easily. It's just hard to get a read on this game because I'm seeing 9 at some books. I'm seeing 8 at a couple others. I'm just not sure.
This would be a prime teaser candidate for me, where I would tease Miami to -2.5.
Yeah. Oh, this is by the way, this is a great week for teasers.
So, I was thinking the same thing this morning. Like, oh my goodness.
I have so the 2 teasers that I have for this week, I have and this was one that I bet earlier before the line. I took Baltimore and Detroit when they were both at -8. So now I have both of them at -2. And then the other one that I have is I have the Packers from 1.5 to 7.5. And then I moved the Chiefs, who there's some stupid Patrick Mahomes and Chiefs stats against the Broncos, which if you want to talk about that game, I just pulled them up. They're incredible. They haven't lost to the Broncos.
Any Patrick Mahomes and Chiefs stat is the polar opposite of every Otani and Angels stat. Like where it's just like, oh my goodness, Patrick Mahomes is the first person to do this since 1837, and the Chiefs are 19-0 when he does it. When Otani is like, yeah, Otani hit 3 doubles and 2 home runs, and the Angels lost 5-4. Like, Jesus Christ, poor guy.
That's an amazing analogy, and it's so true. But I took the Chiefs and I moved them down to -1. And then put the Packers at +7.5. But I mean, you could do Miami this week very easily. You could take Tennessee at home against Atlanta, who doesn't score a lot of points. The low total, move it up to 8.5. If you think the Cowboys are going to win straight up, go ahead and move that game down. There's so many options on the board this week from a teaser perspective that you can go nuts if you really want to.
Yeah. We could talk a little bit more about that KC game because with the weather expected to play a big factor into this, what does that do to you if you're trying to bet the over/under?
So I took the under earlier when I saw that report come out. I was able to find it at 47. I decided to make it a little bit more of a juice play, move the line a half point to 47.5. Just because 47 is such a key number traditionally when it comes to totals. Yeah. But snow doesn't really scare me off with the Chiefs. It would scare me much more with the Broncos. because they've put up some decent offensive numbers at times this year, but there's not a lot of confidence there. And even though they're playing better defensively, are they going to stop Kansas City? Probably not. Like, this sets up for a great day for Isaiah Pacheco. Like, if we're thinking about it from a prop perspective,
Right.
because they feel fully confident in him. And I keep waiting for McKinnon to get more opportunities in the passing game, but they just trust Pacheco more, and that's kind of led to less opportunities on the field for McKinnon besides 2-minute drills. But he torched Denver last year. He had 4 touchdowns against them. So maybe you roll the dice a little bit with an anytime touchdown for McKinnon just because he's torched Van Joseph in the past. So I'm looking at the total. Let's see if I can pull it up really fast right now. Total for Kansas City and Denver has moved down to,
I got it 46.5 in front of me.
46.5 at FanDuel. DraftKings has already moved it down to 45.
Wow.
And the more snow you start to see in that game, the more the total is going to go down. So if you like 46.5, if you're comfortable with it, take it now. But honestly, like, I think maybe if you're looking for a value play, it might be on the Chiefs offense team total, because they've played in snow before, and Mahomes actually put up really solid numbers. I teased some of those numbers too, by the way, for Mahomes and the Chiefs against the Broncos. So
yeah,
a couple that I pulled that I absolutely love. So Mahomes, over the course of his career on the road, 28-18-1 against the spread. He is going for his 17th consecutive road division win. Absurd in this era of the NFL. And probably my favorite, just to rub a little salt in the wound of Denver fans. By the way, I'm not even a Chiefs fan. I've just lived in Kansas City for almost a decade. Patrick Mahomes has 17 losses, like, in his career, straight up losses. If they beat the Broncos on Sunday, you know how many losses Russell Wilson will have in his Broncos career?
Is it 17?
17.
That's
the best.
disgusting.
It's incredible.
Gracious. That is incredible.
Absolutely incredible.
Just when you think that there aren't any more numbers to point out how great Mahomes is.
Yeah, he's Shohei Ohtani with rings. Like that's so good. Yeah. I might have to steal that. I'll is it stealing if I give if I give you and the Pump Fake podcast credit for it? Or
yeah, no, if you like put the hat tip thing in the bottom,
okay.
Yeah, no worries on my end from that.
All right, good.
I don't know where to. What was that?
I said we're on the same page.
Perfect. I'm so tempted to bet Bears plus 8.5 just because I don't trust the Chargers to play a normal game.
Tyson Bagent, man. What did Chris Berman call him on NFL Prime? Secret Bagent.
The secret Bagent.
Secret Bagent. So Tyson Bagent, by the way.
Is that all you have to do, by the way, for a Berman is just growl.
My favorite Chris Berman-ism is not any of like the whoop or whatever. It's always, there will never be another person that will be first to wish you a happy holiday for anything before Chris Berman. Like he'll find you and let us be the first to wish you a very happy Arbor Day. Big fan of the trees. Love the trees. If like, hey, by the way, Andy Reid, let us be the first to wish you a happy National Cheeseburger Day. Double down. And that's been the Chris Berman.
That's fucking hilarious.
That I just absolutely love. Like every week, let us be the first to wish you and your family the best.
I swear, I'm a freak, and I rewatched every prime time from like 02 to 05, and I shit you not, like if I close my eyes and you do that, I can picture just hear it. We'll be right back.
New in the Matrix.
Oh,
well, by the way, while we're on this subject, if I may,
yes,
my 4.5-year-old, just started to get into football this year. I don't know whether it's just because we let him stay up late to watch like the first quarter of the Chiefs and the Lions when the season opened. Right. And, like people ask me, are you gonna raise your son to be a Bears fan like you? I'm like, no, I love my kids. Why would I do that? But he was watching that game and he was like mesmerized and he was really getting into football. And then like next day he wanted to watch the highlights. And now, like, he doesn't ask for like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse or Bluey. Like, he asks to watch football highlights. So it's amazing. But I think I was involved in something. I was like, oh my God, there's this show where they play the highlights of all the games. It's called NFL Primetime. And I used to watch it when I was a kid. Like, do you want to watch? He's like, yeah, sure. And the other Chris Berman aspect that I love is if there's ever like a possible upset going on, it's always, and now Tyson Bagent, touchdown, 14-3, Bears. it's 28-17, Patriots. So now I would do that, and now my son is starting to do like his own version of Chris Berman.
Wow, that is so funny.
Go Ravens, Cardinals.
It's
incredible. It just brings me so much joy.
Chris Berman brings so much joy. And obviously, like the Bermanisms are really good. Josh Tears of McCown, like that one. It's very good. Or I don't know why he. Oh God!
I mean, the Steelers had the best one. Was with hey Jerome. You better.
Tom Jackson's just losing his shit next to him because he's laughing so hard. Oh my goodness! Oh, it's the greatest show of all time. I love it so much.
Yes.
I didn't even know what we were. Oh, Tyson Bagent. That's why we got on.
Yeah, Bears.
Yes. Hey, if the Bears win this game.
Yeah, it's gonna get stupid in Chicago.
Yep.
I actually said that last week on the podcast on Benny and the Bets. I said I think the Bears are gonna win straight up, and I think you're gonna start to see the conversation get weird in Chicago. And like it's because he's running the system that they want to run. Yeah. And my buddy Danny Parkins, who does Afternoon Drive in Chicago, he was talking to Olin Kreutz on his show. And he basically was talking about how the Bears just don't want to run a type of offense that's going to be conducive to Justin Fields' strengths. Because the two games that they did this year and the games last year that they did, he put up awesome numbers. And the Bears were good, but like they just don't want to do it. They want to win games out of the pocket. And he basically, Olin was saying, if I'm Justin Fields, I want out of Chicago because of this. Like they're not going to tailor a game plan to my strength. And Danny's point was, well, isn't that like the antithesis of what good coaches are supposed to do?
Yeah.
Like you're trying, and that was Nagy's issue for a long time. He was trying to put the round hole in the square peg, and it just wasn't going to work. He was trying to run the Chiefs offense with the goddamn Bears. Like at some point it's just not going to look the same, and you have to adjust. So I don't know. Bagent is capable. I don't think he's the next Brock Purdy. And that's not a slight. Purdy is in an offense with an elite offensive line with terrific playmakers. Bagent is looking like he's going to be a solid NFL backup quarterback. And that's a hard thing to find. Like that should be celebrated as an undrafted free agent from Shepherd University. Like this is a great thing. He doesn't have to be the anointed starter for the Bears just because he can run a West Coast offense. So he's going to run the type of offense that they want to run. The Chargers and Justin Herbert and Brandon Staley have been historically bad covering the spread in the second half. I envision a scenario where it's like 17-6 going into halftime, and the Bears or the Chargers will have a chance to win the game on the final play. And so the Bears will likely cover, but I'll probably take them at a better line once the second half starts because for whatever reason, the Chargers are just that team that cannot find a way to take teams out. especially at home. Like there's gonna be a lot of Bears fans there. I don't trust them to cover that big of a number, even though they're supremely talented. Like Khalil Mack could have 6 sacks in the game, and it's still going to be one possession game by the time it's all said and done. So I would advise anybody who wants to take the Bears here, you can take the 8.5. I'd rather take it at a better number, knowing that the Chargers are just abysmal as a second half team.
If the Chargers lose this game, does Brandon Staley get fired?
How many weeks have we been saying that? Well, the Chargers can't lose this one. Oh, the Chargers lose this one.
I mean, if you're 2-5 and lose to the Tyson Bagent-led Bears at home, yes. What's stopping them?
He should be. And you roll the dice with with Kellen Moore and see what happens. But
yeah,
I would think so, but it hasn't happened yet. And if you were trying to save your season before, that would have been an ideal time to do so.
Are there any other lines or props that we haven't touched yet that you were just itching and jumped on as soon as you saw them?
Not from a props perspective just yet. There's still a few lines that I'm combing through and trying to determine the way I want to go here. But a couple other dogs that I like this week. I like the Giants at home against the Jets. I like that number at 3. Giants are especially with Tyrod there. Like it's just
they have no reason that they should put Daniel Jones back in when he's healthy. Zero reason.
I mean, and it's a money thing, right? Like it's gonna have to be. Like,
even then, though, like they structured that contract where they can get out of it at the end of this year.
Right. I think it's just it's a determination. If you're the Giants, like what are you playing for? And let's say you do think you can get some decent performances out of Jones, maybe then you try to trade him. Maybe so you can get something for him as opposed to just letting him go. But you're right. Like the contract is reasonable from that standpoint. But I do expect them to go back to him, even if Tyrod continues to play well. Maybe the locker room will dictate otherwise. Maybe if they beat the Jets straight up, that changes. I don't know. But I like the Giants at +3. I like Washington +7 at home against Philadelphia.
I do too. They always play Philadelphia well.
They play them well. They play them tough. Philadelphia coming off of an emotional home victory last week.
I took the Commanders.
An atrocious road loss in New York as well. So it's a week-to-week league. I think the 7 is reasonable. I expected this to be more 6 or so. So I think you're getting good value on the 7. And I talked about the other plays that I'm on, the Carolina +3.5, the teasers with Green Bay up to 7.5, and the Chiefs at -1. The Ravens and the Lions as a teaser, and then also the under for Chiefs and Broncos at 47.5. And as soon as we're done here, I'm going to go ahead and grab that Tank Dell bet too at over 46.5 this week.
I took Commanders over 17.5 total points, and that feels like one that should hit.
Yeah, like there's talent on this offense. The Eagles still have some concerns in that secondary. Like by the way,
I want to see if you know this. Do you know how many sacks Sam Howell is on pace to take this year?
I don't, but I would imagine it's quite a few.
So I think the NFL record is like 77. Last time I checked, he's on pace for 92.
Oh God,
that poor bastard's dying back there.
And also, like if we're walking down narrative street, like you have the Jonathan Allen quote from last week, and maybe that got them fired up for a little bit. Maybe it's like a first half play for Washington instead. Maybe you get them at like 3.5 or 4.
Yeah.
But I'm intrigued, and I think 7 is a reasonable line for a home division dog for sure. I think the other line that I found over the course of this week was division dogs over the last 2 years. And I want to make sure that I can get these specific notes because I did write them down. Division dogs over the last season and a half of more than a touchdown are 6-0 against the spread and 19-5-0 against the spread over the last 2 seasons. So
wow.
Washington fits that category. Not New England because they're not at home.
Right.
But I Washington for sure fits the bill for this game. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. Denver But again, like that's why I tease the Chiefs
Teased
line
it down.
But yeah, Denver and Washington are the two teams that fit that criteria this week.
Duly noted. All right, buddy.
And,
well,
if you tease the Packers,
yes,
then it also counts too, doesn't it?
Yeah. What have you got coming on KC Sports Network?
We had a really good episode this week with a longtime bookmaker in Las Vegas, a guy named Rafael Esparza. We went through the Week 8 slate together. Also went through some pretty remarkable stories he has. He's basically worked and been in books for probably like 8 different major sports books in Las Vegas. So really great stories from him. Dove into the slate. We talked about the weird money that's coming on Denver this week, which might be a bit concerning for Kansas City as to why that might be. And really just some helpful insights when it comes to betting Week 8. So that's available right now this week on Benny and the Bets. And hopefully we'll have a very intriguing guest ahead of the matchup next week out in Germany, the Tyreek Hill revenge game between the Chiefs and the Dolphins next week. And of course, we'll go through the course of the week as well. And NBA is back, which is also a lot of fun. So we'll get that covered as well.
Very fun. For me, if you're listening to this or watching it now or listening to it as a podcast, however you're doing it, a certain Bears quarterback I might be doing something with early next week, depending on how that game goes against the Chargers. So keep an eye out for that. Power rankings writing up on Tuesday for USA Today. You can find all the usual wit and humor in the 32-1 power rankings, behind the steel curtain, all the Steelers stuff there. But yeah, keep tuning into the Pump Fake. We'll have Ben Albright on Monday talking trade deadline stuff as well. But hey, Benny, I always love doing this with you. We'll definitely do it very much sooner than later, and keep doing Chris Berman impressions every time that you hear. I think that might be the new cue that we have to do.
And then, Jared, let me be the first to wish you very, very happy and safe Week 8 of the National Football League.
Oh, that's my new favorite thing. All right, buddy. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. We'll see you next time on the Pump Fake.